Good evening, everyone. I am Lakshmi Baskaran, Vice President of Engineering at SEDNA. So when I was originally approached to talk in an AI and ML meetup, I was wondering what would be an impactful topic to the meetup. And when I was on the memory lane of wondering to present the right topic that would be impactful, my 7-year-old daughter, she asked me, what is AI? And I had to deconstruct in her own terms that AI is nothing but a robot. And then she becomes a bit more curious and she's wondering, what is the oldest robot in the world? And I couldn't answer that. I had to spend some time reading about the history of AI. And I thought it would be suitable to start today's talk sharing what I read and what I enjoyed about AI's history. AI, before we go into the AI, 1950s has been the time when the information revolution started. Just around the same time, artificial intelligence also started to find its significance. Alan Turing, one of our forefathers of artificial intelligence, he found the Turing model. Alan Turing decided to publish the Turing model in not a computational journal, but a philosophical journal called The Mind. Just in the same decade, around 1956, a group of experimental psychologists, they come together and they want to redefine psychology as the science of behavior. Why? Because what happens inside our brain is not publicly visible. What is visible and what could be driven by objectives is the human behavior. And that experimentation and thought process led to what we call today as cognitive revolution. Even though information revolution and cognitive revolution sounds like two different eras in the world of technology and artificial intelligence, they were very closely wound. I mean, they came together very closely in order to define and in order to produce what we have today as artificial intelligence. So this is the past of AI. What is happening today? Let's take a rough guess here. What do we all think was the investment made towards artificial intelligence in 2020? If it makes it any easier, just keep in mind that we went through a global pandemic where the funds were dry, the investments were dry in many different shapes and forms. So keeping that in mind, let's take a guesstimate on what was the investment made towards artificial intelligence in 2020. And here it is, $25 billion. During a year when governments, institutions were struggling to make ends meet, $25 billion comes from several investment sources towards artificial intelligence projects, which is great. We all need technological advancement. But this raises the question, what is the return of investment that organizations realize, the community realizes with the investments that goes into the AI projects or into the AI startups? One of the interesting reads in Forbes states that roughly around 60% of the organizations have reported that they haven't seen very clear business gains with investments in artificial intelligence. It is quite shocking. Why? What leads to this? Before we go there, since 1950, since the finding days of artificial intelligence, we have gone through 2 AI winters. And what is an AI winter? AI winter is the duration of time in history where there has been a dip in terms of investments coming from private and governmental institutions towards artificial intelligence initiatives. So the first AI winter was between 1970s and 1980s, and the subsequent one was between the late 1980s and early 1990s. What led to the first AI winter? In 1974, the UK Parliament appointed Sir James Lighthill to investigate what is happening with all the artificial intelligence investments that the government of UK has been making. And Sir Lighthill, he takes few months, he goes through the industry domains and understands what has been the value proposition of it. He comes back and reports few months later that AI did not stand up to the grandiose promises that it made. And another interesting fact or interesting theory that he states is some of the special computational programs, they fared better than their AI counterparts. Now, as we can all imagine, there's a dip coming from investment across the globe on artificial intelligence projects as a result of this finding. We had a similar one in 1980s. Since then, there has been consistent investment in artificial intelligence projects, which led to today's explosive growth of AI. Now, there are a lot of technologists in the industry who are concerned if we are going to have another AI winter. I don't think we can afford that. The days of 1970s and 80s, when we had the first 2 AI winters, AI was not widely prevalent everywhere. Today, I think without the blink of an eye, we all would accept what AI in Netflix recommends as the next show to watch. We trust AI so deeply, so we cannot afford another AI winter. So what do we need to do in order to shift that? What do we need to do in order to not go towards another AI winter? I strongly believe, and some of the AI experts I've spoken in the industry also believe that in the last decade or two, there has been a shift in the way we actually absorbed AI. Most entrepreneurs and most organizations have started to see AI as a trend, but not as an enablement technology. We see more of this. Entrepreneurs saying, I'm building an AI product because they want to follow the trend, as opposed to, I'm using AI to enable my product. The one on the left is going behind the technology, and the one in the right is going behind solving your customer's problem. And if that customer's problem needs artificial intelligence, needs machine learning, so be it. If not, we should not try and superimpose a technology just to follow the trend or the pattern of artificial intelligence. I think this reminds me of a quote from Andrew Ng, who states that AI is the new electricity. Many companies, they use electricity to manufacture products and obviously sell those products and make money. But however, there are very few companies that make money by selling electricity. Let's draw some parallels from that to artificial intelligence. As long as a product, a service offering uses AI to enable their users, to enable their customers, then they could continue to evolve the product using the technology and continue to do a great job at selling it and expanding their horizon. But the moment we start chasing, like electricity, we start chasing AI as a trend, that is where we get into this deep trouble of not meeting some of the grandiose promises, or not meeting or not resolving some of the imminent problems in the globe. So let's draw some parallels to what I just described to what is happening currently in the edtech industry through AI. AI in edtech industry, as we all know, is one of the thriving and booming industries in artificial intelligence. Just in the last year, I believe there's been roughly around $4 billion of investments that has gone towards AI edtech industry. Now, education, we all know, is one of the key and critical services that we need to offer. And technology has led to some of the great advancements in the field of education. And definitely AI did play a role as well. We all know some of the AI applications in the field of education that has made a great progress in education. But what's happening on the other side? One of the investments that went from AI in edtech is towards virtual charter schools. What is happening in virtual charter schools? It is an initiative to replace physical schools and physical teachers. So artificial intelligence determines the syllabus of the student based on the strengths and opportunities of the student. AI educates the student. AI gives tests to the student, and AI also grades the student. So we are now building robots in the next generation who lack the contextual thinking that is offered by our teachers. As a result, only less than 50% of the graduates or students graduate out of the virtual charter school. And even the ones who have graduated from the virtual charter school, there is limited to no data to figure out what they've gone out to do and contribute to the world. The next one, anti-school shooter software. I'm so glad we don't need in this country. We don't need an anti-school shooter software in Canada, but it's very disheartening to see the amount of investment that goes into an AI-led software like this. Uber for education. Can education be Uberized? Education is not a commodity, it is a service. And Uber for education being led through AI, there's been a lot of investment that was funneled into this, which I believe could have shifted to some of these really areas of education where technology or artificial intelligence has really not tapped into it. As you see, there is a huge space here that is still left untapped by technology and AI. I'm sure we'll all agree that one of the reasons for early development in kids is due to early exposure to language. Let's consider a 2-year-old in Sudan and a 2-year-old in Canada. The gap gets built right at 2 years because the kid in Sudan does not have an early exposure to language because of all the political, social, and family structure and setup there. As a result, that gap builds right there and continues to widen as the kid becomes an adult. So what could we do through technology, through artificial intelligence to tap into that market? There are many developing countries that needs AI to actually tap into the right product or the right service that can provide immediate value and immediate return of investment to the investors as well. So how do we do this? Easier said than done in most cases. And most of us attending today's meetup, we do not hold the position of authority to influence what kind of investments, how many $billion of investments goes towards which AI projects. However, we can all do our part. As product leaders and engineering leaders, we can all do our part when we be very conscious on how we choose AI and machine learning to what all outcomes or offerings we want to deliver. And I want to share a short anecdote that we recently experienced at SEDNA. At SEDNA, we redefined the way how organizations communicate. We changed email being the vehicle of communication, of exchanging messages. We changed that to build an intelligent communication system for organizations that use emails to communicate. Now, as you can imagine, one of the key and critical features of our platform is search. And roughly a few months ago, I was in a discussion with our engineers, and we all expressed interest to make our search smarter and intelligent. And immediately, majority of the people in the room, including me, we all said, let's build an AI-enabled search. Follow the pattern of thought here. The moment we said smart and intelligent, we wanted to build an AI-enabled search. And we wanted to push ourselves back and said, what are we doing to solve the customer's problem here? And we went through the golden circle, something I always adopt, and I adopted from Simon Sinek. And I use the golden circle for decision making, for communicating decisions within the teams. The process of the golden circle, this is how it goes. It starts with why. And in our case, why do we need an AI-enabled search? So let's assume someone from a financial department who's using SEDNA for communication. Something that they would normally do is they would search for all the invoices paid in the last 1 month. Now, obviously, they would use the search criteria as invoice. Now, we all wondered if a search is made just based on the search phrase, what about those messages where search is represented as payment, search is represented as accounts payable, or search is represented as accounts receivable? So different industries and different domains have different ways to represent the phrase payment or invoice. Now, the problem that we wanted to solve here is when our user provides a search criteria, we wanted to give him all the surrounding context that pertains to his search criteria. So that's the why part of it. And how do we do that? We wanted to build domain-specific ontology through machine learning. And what is that? What is no longer an AI-enabled search? What is a contextual search? We want to we want to provide responses for a user's search criteria, not just based on the search phrase, but also based on the context surrounding the search phrase. So by going through this pattern or principle, we basically shifted from building an AI-enabled search because we were clearly following a trend by building an AI-enabled search. We shifted from there to building what we call today as a contextual search. And with contextual search, we are clearly solving a customer's problem as opposed to building for a trend. AI will go a long way to solve human problems. But what is necessary is delivering impact. Delivering business impact, economical impact, and social impact. People need to see the value delivered by AI in order for our investments to continue coming into AI so that we can continue to do some great things through artificial intelligence and machine learning. I actually want to end this call by saying thanks to AI. The reason I was able to focus on today's talk is because AI is actually helping my 7-year-old daughter to play chess in her computer. Thank you, everyone.
One theme that it seems to be keep coming up, Lakshmi, that you kind of touched on briefly, was around how businesses want to kind of just get into AI by maybe just hiring a data scientist. What do you think, and why do you think this keeps being a problem for so many businesses? I think I kind of relate this AI boom to kind of when I was recruiting when cloud first came out. And it was like, ooh, cloud. Everybody was starting up a cloud consulting firm. And I'm really starting, my opinion only, is it's a similar kind of wave. Everybody's like riding this AI and data wave. And I don't think it's until maybe a few years down the track until everybody's gotten into it per se, that we really and failed and tried with a number of business cases and projects that the mass adopters start coming in and have learned from those mistakes. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on why you think this is such a problem and what companies can do essentially to improve their ML ops and improve the efficiency and the return on the on the $25 billion that all these companies and VC firms are coming to the party with.
I think the investors, the organizations, and the entrepreneurs need to go back to the drawing board to identify what is the value proposition that they've delivered. And Parinas did touch upon it during her first talk. Do not shoot for the North Star. Every time you're building a model, even if it's simple and dirty, it's okay, as long as it is solving your customer's problem. And then go back to the drawing board to see what is the value proposition circle that you've covered there. And if you see a real value that you're delivering with your projects, with your product that uses artificial intelligence, then there you go. You have more reasons to invest more into those projects and make it more adaptable to our customers. With some of the projects I listed in the edtech industry, the companies have gone full blown without being agile and without being iterative to see if what they are building is what the country needs, what the users need. Building an AI for a shooting software, we are solving a problem through technology, but the problem needs to be solved in a different fashion, not through technology. And the investments that goes into those kind of entrepreneurial initiatives could instead be shifted towards more profitable initiatives, but still that will deliver imminent value that the world needs now.
Yeah,
because people think delivering value is not profitable. I disagree, because delivering value can still be made profitable.
That was a really great presentation. And, defining the value prop of the product that you're building is so important when it comes to selling the product. If you're building something just for the sake of building it, it won't work out. But one of the questions that I always, and I'm running a startup, I see a lot of startup around me in the accelerator that we are in. And one of the questions about AI products is always that the clients would like to do a POC at all times at the beginning. And most of the time, as a company that is building product, you don't want to deliver the full product, right, at the beginning. So the POC is like a little small portion of a project, which is kind of like weird because the data makes the AI model better, right? But if you're working on a little portion of a project to show the value of your product, majority of times you would fail. So what is your suggestion there for companies or individuals who are building products and they are getting into this cycle of doing a POC before delivering the full product? What are your suggestions?
A very good question. And this is something that's very close to my heart. Quality versus speed. And it is not just in artificial intelligence or machine learning. This is a dilemma we always have in the field of technology. Am I going to deliver the best quality outcome, or am I going to deliver something that I could deliver faster? And the answer to that is, it is contextual. It depends. If you are building a feature where the client can realize the value only if you do it best, then go for the best. But if you're building a feature where the value could be delivered in iteration, then go for the speed over the quality. Now, the important thing here is not every user or not every customer will appreciate and acknowledge an iterative feature development. When you're doing a couple of iterations and presenting it to a customer who is very quality centric, then you're going to fail, especially as a startup organization. You want customers by your side. So it is important to understand which users and which customers acknowledge and appreciate an iterative evolution of the product. Share your first few iterations with those users and customers, gather feedback, and then iterate on it. So identifying for every feature, whether it's the speed or the quality that is important. And if you go by speed, identifying the user and customer base who would be able to acknowledge and give you feedback is very important to determine, as a developer, as a product manager, am I going to chase speed or am I going to chase quality?
Kartika is asking, what is the major differences between AI and machine learning?
Good question, Kritika. I do not consider myself as an expert in AI and machine learning. To me, in layman's terms, I would say artificial intelligence is more around automating mental models. And machine learning is more around using data and past history to derive the future probability. So that's how I would distinguish AI and ML.